Law school's scary. Making changes is scary.
Yeah.
Doing hard things is scary, right? But it's a choice whether you live in that place of fear or whether you sort of accept that you have abilities and you have talent and that you're there for a reason.
Hi, I'm Chris LeBrun, your host of the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. As someone who's never been afraid of dreaming big and going for it all, I often find myself with a lot on my plate. I'm a husband and father, a nonprofit fundraiser, and an entrepreneur. What I've realized is my view of productivity was pretty toxic. After decades of believing that in order to do more, you had to work harder, I began to see productivity as this beautiful thing. Holistic productivity is the idea that you can accomplish your professional, personal, and purpose-driven goals in a healthy way, and doing so will make you happier and more fulfilled. Join me each week as we break down myths about productivity, share practical tips for maximizing your time, energy, and focus, and hear from others about their productivity journey. This is the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for being here for this episode of the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. I'm just so glad that you are taking time out of your day, even if you're listening to this while you're doing something else. Maybe you're driving, you're relaxing, you're cooking dinner, whatever it is. Thank you for taking this time and investing in your goals just by listening to this podcast. We talk about this all the time, but really the whole reason behind this, the purpose of this podcast is to help you dream big, plan smart, and live fully. And I think the conversation that we're going to have today with our guest will look at what that means when we have a collision sometimes between personal and professional goals. What does that look like, and how do we tackle those big goals so that we can live fully? A lot of people talk about lifelong learning, but there's a big difference between maybe taking an online class or even a semester-long class at your local community college and overhauling your entire career after a decade in the workforce. That kind of leap asks tougher questions. Who do you want to become? What are you willing to risk chasing that dream that doesn't come with guarantees? Well, my guest today knows that journey firsthand. Jason Mustard is a good friend from college and now an attorney and partner at an immigration law firm in the Bay Area. But his path to practicing law wasn't a straight shot. Jason earned a journalism degree and built a career in marketing and recruitment at a Christian boarding school, and then spent time as an English teacher. After 10 years in the workforce, with a family depending on him, he pressed pause on all of it and started law school. That is a step, right? Today, more than a decade later, he's not only practicing law, he's thriving in a field he felt called to pursue. And his story is a powerful reminder that it's never too late to chase the goals that tug on your heart. And starting over doesn't have to mean starting from zero. So welcome, Jason. Thank you for joining us here today. It's great. I know we saw each other a couple of years ago, but other than that, it's been a long time outside of social media, and it's just so great to connect a little bit before we started the conversation here today. But thank you for being willing to share your journey with everybody listening to the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
So before we kind of get started, tell me a little bit about immigration law. I'm sure that's a pretty broad area. Talk a little bit about your firm and the kind of work that you do. What are some of the specific areas that you're practicing in?
Sure. So immigration law has essentially three major areas of practice, right? So there are some immigration attorneys who sort of only do family-based stuff. So someone marries someone from another country and they're sponsoring them for a green card, or, possibly other kinds of visas that don't involve going to court or anything like that. And our firm does that. Our firm also does business immigration. So we work with a lot of different kinds of companies, a lot of nonprofits, a lot of startups, a lot of technology startups in the Bay Area. Right now, AI is a big one. We're working with quite a few AI startups. It's really cool to see the kinds of things that they're coming up with and doing. And so those are employment visas, like the ones you hear about a lot is the H-1B. And so our firm actually does that as well.
Okay.
And then the third branch, most common, is people who are practicing in the immigration courts. So removal defense, most commonly folks applying for asylum, but also there's some other kinds of relief. Sometimes people apply for a green card through their spouse in immigration court, if that's just how it works out. So we do all three phases in our firm, which is maybe a little bit unusual for a boutique firm like we are. So in our firm, we have three partners or three attorneys, and then we have a staff of 10 or 12 other folks that are helping us out. And then we have a few attorneys that work with us sort of on a contract basis. So we're a smaller law firm, but we're very busy. The two senior partners in the firm, we have one who's really very specialized in the immigration court matters and family-based stuff. And then the other is extremely capable with business immigration and that sort of thing. So we have a good breadth of knowledge in our firm. And I think people hear about what's going on with immigration right now and they think, oh, you guys must lose every case. And that's not really true. I mean, that's why people hire an immigration attorney. We don't win everything, but we win a lot more than we lose. And I think that's true for probably most immigration attorneys. At least I hope so. But yeah, immigration law, it's the cool thing about it is you're dealing with people from all over the world. I mean, I will be working on a case for someone from Japan, and 5 minutes later, I'm working on something for someone from Hungary, and then Mexico, and then Russia. And so that can be really fun. We also have a liaisons office in our firm in Barcelona. So we do quite a bit of business immigration with European companies, and we all just love Barcelona. And so we decided to focus there. And so we get to travel, internationally quite a bit for that kind of thing. So
that's awesome.
Not too bad.
Yeah. That's awesome. Let's go back. Like I said at the beginning, you had a solid career in education, and something that I always thought was a good career for you. I thought it was a good fit based on you and your personality and what you were doing. What made you stop and say, I need to do something entirely different with my life?
I'm not sure I totally know. So I did. I worked at a school called Monterey Bay Academy. It's a boarding school, and it's out here on the coast in Santa Cruz County in California. And it's a beautiful campus. It's an amazing place. The kids are great. And I really, really loved all 10 years of my working there. Everything I did. In fact, my son just graduated from the school. My daughter's a freshman there this year. My wife is now the registrar at that school. So
we've were in.
Yeah, we've stayed very connected to the school, and I still volunteer as much as I can and everything else. So I loved being a teacher. I loved working with high school kids, and I loved the folks that I worked with. So it really wasn't anything to do with that. I think it was more that I grew up in a very small church in a town called Tracy, California, and that church had a lot of professionals. We had a lot of engineers, we had a lot of doctors and dentists. And so most of the men that I grew up with, were professionals in one way or another. And so I think, and those men had a lot of influence on me. I grew up with their kids, and we spent a lot of time. We were a very close-knit community. And I think that had a really big impact on me. And so, after 10 years in education, thinking about just long-term sort of career goals and things that I would like to accomplish in my life, I think I was realizing that I really wanted to do graduate school. And for a while, I looked at doing, graduate school in literature, something that would be meaningful to my career as a teacher. But I think I always felt a little bit pulled to law school. It felt like something that matched some of my skills. I'm horrible at math and science, right? So I knew dental school's out. Medical school is out. So law school, but I've always loved writing, and I'm a big chatterbox and everything, and I love people, and standing up front is not something that was ever a problem for me. So that was I felt drawn to it, and the more I looked into it, the more it felt like yeah, I want to do this. Really, the linchpin was whether or not my wife was on board with it.
Right.
Because
Yeah, yeah. I'm guessing, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, so our kids were very young, and part of the equation was, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it before the kids realize that I'm gone all the time,
Yeah.
right? So like, and actually being in school, once you get the hang of it, I had more time with my kids in some way, but I didn't want to get to like middle school when your kids are doing plays and
Right.
sports and things and never be able to be there because I had class or whatever. And so my kids were very young. I think my daughter was about 18 months old when I went back to school, and my son was, I think he started kindergarten the same time, the same fall semester that I started law school.
Yeah.
Right. And so I actually remember when I was studying for the bar exam, he was 8. So I remember him asking if he could help. And I said, sure. So we took my flashcards. We would, in the evenings, we would take my flashcards and he would show me the card and I would quote the rule.
Yeah.
Just as the name of the rule. And then I would quote the rule word for word and he would tell me if I got it right or not. And he always said yes, because there's so many big words.
Right.
That I couldn't but yeah, I mean, really, it would not have happened at all if my wife was not okay with it, because she had been staying home with the kids. She had stayed home from work, and we were a single income family for a few years, and it was actually a beautiful time.
Yeah.
That I would never trade for anything. So, I felt a little guilty about sort of stepping in on that time, but it was sort of the transition that we agreed we needed to make. And she went back to work as a teacher, and very fortunately, we were able to find a place that we could afford in the Bay Area, because I went to law school in San Francisco, and she was able to find a full-time job teaching. And so our kids basically went to school where she was teaching.
Yeah.
And she even got to be my son's teacher a couple of times.
Yeah.
And my daughter's, actually. So it really, everything worked. We felt really blessed that everything sort of fell into place, but very much she kept the family afloat while I was going to the city trying to do this thing.
Yeah.
So.
And what's that like? Because you're in a law school with kids, can I say that are like, straight out of undergrad. They're 10 years younger than you. I mean, yeah. Did they call you grandpa on campus? I mean, like,
well, remember, like you, Chris, I had the extended undergraduate program.
Yeah.
So I did 6 years of undergrad before I went on. So I was even a little older I was quite a bit older than most of my classmates.
Yeah.
There was a handful of us that were older.
Yeah.
And a couple of them, I think after a semester, they were like, they couldn't do it. But it was more common for the older students to be going to school at night after working all day.
Right.
So that was an option. You could do law school over 4 years by going to night school. And when I was a teaching assistant for contracts law, my second year of law school, and I taught a review session for the night students. And I was so even more grateful to my wife after seeing those guys, because you've never seen a more dejected and tired group of people than these heroes that are trying to do law school after working for 9 or 10 hours during the day.
Sure.
I mean, they look so depressed. But so I got to go to school full time. I didn't have to worry about work so much. With everybody in my class, most of them, like 90% of them, were between 20 and 26, 25, 22 to 26 years old.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, at the school I went to, 2 of my former students who were from Asia were going to school for their master's in business administration at the same time. So I was literally going to school with people that I could have been their teacher.
Yeah.
Because they had.
You had been.
Some of the folks on my campus, I had been their teacher. So that was a little surreal. But honestly, I always liked young people anyway.
Yeah.
And 25 is a lot different than 15. So I found the thing about law school is, to get into law school, you have to be pretty bright. You got to be pretty sharp, and so going to grad school was like being in honors classes most of the time. Like if anyone who's been in honors classes in high school it's very similar when you're in law school. Like, and I was very fortunate because my year we were very congenial. It wasn't cutthroat.
Okay.
Like you hear these stories about law school where
Yeah.
it's so cutthroat. And it's usually like that because if you're at an ABA approved law school, an American Bar Association law school, there are mandated, limits on how many A's you can get. There's a mandated curve.
Mm.
And so professors love to brag that, well, I can only give 20% of you an A.
Mm.
And I like to be tougher than that. So I only give the top 10% of the class an A. So it was competitive in that sense, but I never felt like I was competing against my classmates. I always felt like I was kind of like in golf. I'm not good enough at golf to compete with anyone else,
Yeah.
but it's more of a competition with myself to see how well I can do.
I love that.
And I love that in school in general. I've always felt that way. Yeah, I like to push myself and see how well I can do. And I did well in law school. They give awards for being one of the top grades in the class, if you're the top grade or the second highest grade. And I won like 6 of those awards over my 3 years in law school.
Wow.
And so what was fun was there were kids who were 24, 25 years old who had done well in undergrad. And some of these guys, they all became my friends eventually, but there was like some kind of frat boy kind of guys. And you would hear them in the back of the class kind of making fun of the older students and talking about like, well, when I finish the year in the top 5%, I'm transferring to Stanford or whatever. And I had a buddy, this guy, I call him my law school husband because in the first like 2 days of law school, he was 2 years younger than me. And he had worked actually as a journalist. He had been worked in the news and stuff. And just the greatest guy, his name's Frank. And he and I kind of found each other very early on in law school. And it was like the two of us all the way through, thick as thieves, and so people would kind of laugh at us or whatever. And I think they thought, oh, maybe these guys aren't the most with it or whatever. And then by the time we got to the second semester of our first year, and we had just kicked their butts all over the place as far as how well we had done on our exams, all of a sudden their tune started changing. By the time we got to the end of third year, I would have a review sessions just for Frank and I'd have 8 to 10 people just knocking on the door. Oh, can we join in? Like everybody kind of learned that we were serious students and that. Yeah. And because I had been a teacher, I knew how to help people learn things.
Sure.
So I had a really fun experience as a teaching assistant for a very difficult professor who was not having a good year. And she took it out on those kids. And a lot of them came to me after and said, like, man, we would not have passed except for your review sessions. And so that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
It's like that 10 years teaching kids, that wasn't all for naught. It still was able to use that a little bit.
Well, absolutely. And I think there's always things in our past that help prepare us for the future. And it's sometimes you can plan those things. Sometimes they just sort of happen and it's providential or whatever, it's coincidence, but then you look back, you're like, wow, that really was helpful for me. As you and your wife are deciding, am I going to take this leap? What were the doubts or fears that showed up and how did you kind of deal with those? Did you ever try to talk yourself out of this? Like, I want to do this, but maybe, the arguments are just too convincing why I shouldn't. And ultimately, how did you overcome those negative voices?
Yeah. So I am way too optimistic about my abilities. As anyone who's ever played basketball with me can tell you. So like I just knew in my heart, I knew that I could do law school and I knew that I could do well.
Yeah.
Right. I never had a question about that.
Okay.
I just knew that because I knew I'm a good writer. I've done a lot of experience in doing drama over the years. Yep. And so I've always been really good at memorizing things. And my mom used to say that I had the gift of BS like my dad. My wife is much more practical and realistic.
Yeah.
And she's much better at sort of like going, okay, well, what happens when this doesn't work out or whatever? And I always felt like, I can always go back to teaching and I would be perfectly happy if law school doesn't work out and teaching ended up being the path. I was not mad about that. I was very confident that I could go and do well, but we definitely had those serious conversations. I wasn't worried about that, and my wife, I know she was confident in my abilities. Also, she knew that I could do it, and she could see that I was serious about it. I think that was her biggest concern. Is like this is not a whim. It's not like, okay, during COVID, I decided that I wanted to have chickens in the backyard, right? And I don't know if I'll always have chickens. I love having chickens, but I went out and I built a shed in my chicken run in my backyard. I don't know how to build anything.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it hasn't blown over in the wind. But my wife didn't want it to be like that. It was some passing fancy or something. Right. It was like, no, this is a career change. This is a new direction.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to. Her concern was she wanted to know I was serious about it and that I was going to see it through. Once we kind of had settled that, then she was on board and she had parameters. Like, I love my wife. She was great. She like the true teacher. She gave me her expectations. I remember she was like, so she started reading up about this kind of thing. Like, what does this take? And she said, I read that it's important for you to be in the top 10% of your class. So you have to be in the top 10% of your class. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it. Sure. And I did. Just barely. But so stuff like that, and so she helped me a lot in that sense that she always gave me the space I needed. It was a very hard thing. It was much harder for her to be raising two little kids, going back to work after spending 3 years just at home with the kids, moving to the city from where we lived, which is very rural. She had to take on a lot more than I did. Yeah. For me, I would go get on the train, drive in, go to the city, and I was in a library. I was meeting new people. I was studying interesting things. So, I mean, the hero through it all was Jo, my wife, because none of it would have been possible without her. And I think that's important for anybody who's listening. When you're thinking about making these kind of changes, is like sizing up your network, your support, because it is so much easier. And I think your chances of success are so much better making these kind of changes when you know that you're not doing it by yourself. Yeah. Right. Like, I went home to my family every night, and being a full-time student, you have a weird schedule. So I was able to go to a lot of school things. I was able to, most days, I could make my kids their lunches and make the family breakfast before I left for law school in the morning, But I mean, having that support, having that network of support, whatever it may be, it's so huge. And that kind of change, it takes resources, it takes time, and you have to be willing to live with some uncertainty. And the thing with law school is, when you finish your JD, that's great, right? May 15, you have a little, we graduated in Davies Symphony Hall in San Francisco. Okay. And so you go there and it's great. There's thousands of people and you march across the stage and everyone's so excited. You got all these cords and, your graduation gown is a little different. You get a poofy hat instead of a flat cardboard one. And that's all good. You go out with your family and then you realize, okay, my JD doesn't mean anything unless I pass the bar.
Yeah.
And so
a whole other phase of this process.
Get one day to be excited about graduating.
Yeah.
And then you go straight into studying for the bar. And so in California, we have to know, at least when I took it, you had to know 14 different areas of law, pretty much stone cold. And what I mean is every area of law may have 100 to 200 rules that you had to have memorized, because they'll give you the facts. And then you have to go, oh, okay, what's the problem that I'm trying to solve here? What's the law? How do these facts apply to that law?
Yeah.
And so for contracts law, you might need to know like 150 rules and case law, just have it memorized. And I called them slap downs, which meant that it was like memorizing lines from a play. So if I knew it was a certain rule, then I just my brain would kick in. I had an automatic, maybe half-page rule statement that I knew by heart. So you have that for 14 areas of the law, you've got 1 to 200 rules.
Wow.
So you just have, your brain's full. It's crazy. And actually, we were talking about Legoland earlier. My wife and her cousin decided that we should all go to Legoland in July, the summer that I took the bar.
Yeah.
2 weeks before I took the bar.
Oh.
She said, our son, he's turning 8, so we're going to go to Legoland for his birthday for 4 days. So you're going to have to take a break from your bar prep. And I was just like, I was freaking out. I've never been more scared. And so I tried to study the whole drive down. I tried to study, the day before we went to the park, and I just couldn't study at all. And I just said, we'll just have to see what happens. It ended up being the best possible thing.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of killing yourself trying to cram everything into your head.
Yeah.
And give yourself a chance to rest. I was like, it's actually in there. But the bar exam, the hardest thing about the bar exam is you prepare for a long time, you take it, then you don't get your results until the Friday before Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
From July to November.
Yes. What I didn't realize, I'd kind of tucked it away because I was working at my law firm as a clerk until I got my bar results to know if I could be a lawyer or not. And I had been working there for the whole last year that I was in law school. So I was gaining experience and hoping to be able to transition.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize was I was carrying all the stress and fear. So you had talked about, like, how do you deal with that fear? And I think, honestly, I just tried to tell myself to be optimistic.
Yeah.
To, just like boldly go forward and have faith that it will work out. Right.
What else can you do?
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. Because it's like at the end of the day, my wife started that summer saying, well, what if you don't pass?
Right.
I was just like, I'm going to pass.
Yeah.
And then, like, as it got closer to finding out, I was like, well, what if I don't pass?
Yeah.
And she started going, no, you're going to pass. But
switch
roles.
I
remember I was driving home from work because my law firm is based in Albany, California. And that's near Berkeley. So it's about an hour or so away. And I was driving home, and my friends started texting me as I was driving home on Friday. Oh, I got my results. What did you get? And it was like 5:30 or something. And I'm like driving. So I was taking my phone in my hand as I was driving and trying to log into the California Bar website. And so I was just like, I couldn't get it to work, and I was struggling. And so I drove all the way back to where we were living in San Jose at the time. And I remember I walked up, we had a condo that we were renting in a bad part of town because that's what we could afford. And before I went in, I pulled out my laptop, and I was outside of my front door, and I got onto our Wi-Fi and looked up whether or not I had passed, with my laptop. And when I looked up and saw the green that I had passed, it doesn't tell you how you did.
Yeah.
You only find out how you did if you don't pass.
Oh.
But when I saw that it said I had passed, I just broke down. And I just kind of lost it for a little minute. And because you didn't realize how much weight you were carrying. Because all those worries that I was carrying that I was trying not to acknowledge, those came flooding through then once I knew it was okay. And then, of course, the celebrations. And then that really felt like the graduation celebration at that point.
Yeah.
So it was funny because getting through, being in law school was great. I love school. I love being a student. I love being a teacher. I love meeting new people. And law school itself, man, it's phenomenal. That the professors are so smart. And what you realize in law school is that, like, it's such a fluid thing. I mean, Obergefell was decided when I was like my second year of law school, which is the decision that made gay marriage legal in the U.S. So it's like to have decisions like that happening while you're studying constitutional law was wild, and you realize like I was on law review. I was fortunate enough to be on law review, which is essentially means you're writing scholarly legal. You're making a publication, and I got published. I wrote an article about the law and food allergies because my son has food allergies. Oh. And so I was published my third year in law school, which was an honor. And you realize, like, this is something, it's out there.
Yeah.
So when someone else is doing research, judges, clerks, or judges, they might use your work.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just wild. It's such a vibrant and fluid thing. And it's so important. And constitutional law was probably one of my favorite classes because you just realize the law is so important and it just touches every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And so that was really exciting for me. And probably if I had any doubts when I was first starting law school about, should I be here? What am I doing? My mind was so engaged and I was so excited about what I was learning that went away pretty quickly. And so I would say that, generally I've tried to study things that I have a lot of interest in, a lot of passion for.
Yeah.
I did that in undergrad. I tried to focus on studying things that I found interesting and that excited me. I always feel bad for my former students when they're like, oh, I'm going into business. And I'm like, do you want to do business?
Yeah.
Like, oh, my dad says I need a business degree. I was like, yeah, but you're like a dancer and an artist, like that's who you are.
Right.
So I've been fortunate that I've been able to study things that really pique my interest and things that I think my natural abilities lend themselves to. And I think that's key. I think that's really important too. It wasn't just picking some random career because I thought, oh, that sounds interesting and they make more money. It was something that I needed to engage, something that I felt like I could do well and that it would be interesting. And it has been.
I know a lot of people, when they are in that sort of career switching mode, they can almost feel like they are giving up part of their identity or who they are. Did that ever come to your mind? Had you been teaching long enough? Had you been in education long enough to wrestle with that? Or did you just sort of embrace this as, hey, this is going to be who I am as well? Let's pause here for a quick break. We'll be right back. If you've ever gone down the rabbit hole of trying every to-do list or project management app, you know how exhausting it can be. You download the app, you set it up, enter all your data, and then scramble to cancel it before the trial ends. Trust me, I've been there and it's no fun. That's why I love Efficient.app. Alex and Andra, a husband and wife team, have spent over a decade testing and reviewing software of all types so you don't have to. Calendars, project management, banking, planners, email marketing, you name it, they've covered it with honest reviews and side-by-side comparisons. And they don't sugarcoat it. If a tool isn't worth your time, they tell you straight up. I've personally found their reviews super helpful when I was trying to sort through different project management apps. It saved me a ton of time and frustration. Best of all, they often have special deals on the tools they recommend so that you can save money. I'm especially grateful to Efficient.app because they've been supporting the Holistic Productivity Podcast since the very beginning. The best way to check them out and support the podcast is through the link in the show notes. So next time you're looking for software, let Efficient.app do the work for you. Trust me, you will not regret it.
Yeah, that was the hardest, probably one of the hardest parts about the switch, because I loved working with kids so much. I loved working in education. I've been blessed because my wife is still an educator. I get to go with her to some conventions where a lot of my friends who are teachers still are there, and I get to be around them. And I love teachers and I love education, and kind of leaving the club to some degree was really hard. It was really tough. And just like my wife got to teach our kids when they were in elementary school, I really was looking forward to teaching my kids when they were in high school. So that was something I had to be okay with giving up. I mean, that was tough. And it's so weird, how we are identified with our careers.
Yeah.
And everyone like tends to think of you that way, like that's who you are. And I understand it, and I do it too. But I think one of the reasons I chose immigration law was, I was fortunate enough to take a class on asylum law my first year in law school. And I realized that there was a sort of a natural connection or similarity between immigration law and working education. And I realized that I had had students in the past who needed help with their documentation, with their papers, and it became personal to me. And I'd never really thought about it before, but my wife was an immigrant. She became a citizen when we were dating in college.
Yeah.
And like I started thinking about all the ways immigration affected my life and how I felt connected to it. And it felt like more akin to education in that it's a little bit more of a calling than other areas of law. It's not, at least to me. And so, like I always tell people, when most lawyers win a case, somebody's winning a lot of money, right? Or there's some grave injustice that's being stopped or overturned. When we win, families get to be together. When we win, people get a chance to pursue the American dream. When we win, I feel like the community is being enriched. And, I'm so positive about immigrants and what they do for our country. It's a really good feeling. And I like when I go to there's two ways people can win asylum, right? One way is in immigration court where it's defensive asylum. It's like, don't deport me because I believe I deserve asylum for whatever reason. The other way is if someone's just here, like on a student visa or something, and say civil war breaks out in their country or their family gets attacked, they might apply for what's called affirmative asylum, where you apply with the USCIS, the asylum office.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that's very different than being in court. But when you're sitting in you're sitting in the waiting room there, and there's hundreds of people from all over the world, from all walks of life. And you realize like everyone in this room has been through some of the worst things imaginable, right? I mean, these people that are applying for asylum most of them have, they're saying, I can't go safely back to my country. And one of the things that is really neat too, so as you're waiting there and everyone goes in for their interviews, folks also come back, at least this is how it used to work before COVID. 2 or 3 weeks after their interview, you go back to the asylum office to pick up the decision. And so you either win asylum or they say, well, we're not going to approve you, but now you'll go to immigration court now and you can tell the judge your story and maybe he'll
appeal.
But when those people would come back, they're in the same room that everyone else is waiting. And you'll never hear someone who is more emotionally overwhelmed than someone who has won asylum. Right? And I think it's similar to me finding out I passed the bar, where it's like, it's a weight you didn't realize you were carrying. And you'll also never meet people who love America more than asylees who have been approved, because it's just such a special thing. So I think that the idea of like helping people in some way, I didn't want to be an attorney just to try to make more money. Right? I wanted to do some kind of work that still was meaningful to me and to the community. At least as far as I was concerned.
Well, and I imagine that for those people seeking asylum, I mean, talking about going through a transition or a change in life, I mean, this is maybe even the biggest one you can have, right? I mean, because you're not only leaving behind your country, but maybe your family and everything that you've ever known, and it's usually because there's strife and struggle and something going on that you can't go back home. So, you're almost being forced into this in some ways, and all the emotion that's wrapped up in that, I'm sure that's just amazing for them to have to deal with.
I'll tell you, immigrants are incredible, generally speaking. I mean, obviously there's different shades, there's lots of different kinds of people, but immigrants are very brave folks. No matter if they're just coming here to work, like you said, leaving everything behind, everything you know. I mean, so many of us don't go very far. I don't remember who said it, but I don't remember, was it Mark Twain talked about how travel was a natural cure for prejudice? Something along those lines, paraphrasing. But I just feel like it's something that's been important for my family. We want to make sure that our kids experience other cultures and other places. There's a lot to learn there, and we can learn a lot from other people and what they bring to the table and those experiences. So, but yeah, it is inspiring to not only see people make those attempts, but to see them thriving
Yeah.
you know, it really kind of puts the perspective on somebody like, oh, you went back to school. Wow, good for you. And
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
like at the end of the day, I was going to be fine no matter what happened with law school. And I'm glad it all worked out. And, I worked really hard to make it work out. But
Right.
yeah, there are tougher transitions that people make.
Yeah, and I've been blessed in my career. Work has taken me almost to virtually every state in the country and 5 continents,
Mm.
and I don't take that for granted, but I love that I've been able to interact with different people, with different cultures. And it always amazes me, for whatever reason, Brazil kind of jumps out in my mind, but I know this has happened virtually everywhere I've gone. You're talking to people and they're like, oh, sorry about my English. And I'm like, I can say 5 words in Portuguese. You're having an actual conversation with me. Don't apologize about your English. I need to go back and figure out more Portuguese because I got 5 words.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, they're always apologizing for that. And I'm like, you have nothing to be sorry for. I'm the one that needs to step up my game.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
travel is amazing. What were some of the tools or routines or decision making frameworks that helped you manage all of those things that you were dealing with in your school, in your family life, all of those things that you were kind of chasing at that time? Let's pause here for a quick break. We'll be right back. Living with pain is no fun at all. Whether it's sore muscles from a workout, nagging joints, or even stress that just won't leave you alone. That's why I love Little Golden Shepherd. They make all natural butters from organic herbs and essential oils, formulated to ease pain, reduce stress, and even soothe sensitive skin. I use the muscle butter after tough workouts, and the joint butter is perfect for my knees, which somehow were bad even when I was a kid. I'm so grateful to have Little Golden Shepherd sponsoring the Wholistic Productivity Podcast. The way they support the show is super simple. Every time you shop through the link in the show notes, a portion of your order helps keep this podcast going. And here's the best part. If you use the promo code WHOLEPROD, you'll save 15% on your first order. That's promo code WHOLEPROD, WHOLPROD. Try Little Golden Shepherd today. You're going to love it as much as I do, and your muscles will too.
I think probably the first thing was making sure that I always kept my priorities in line. And I realized really early on that I needed to be very aware and very constantly appreciative and recognizing the value of what my wife was doing for me to let me have this opportunity.
Yeah.
So if I try, and I still do this, I feel like it's part of being a good husband, but and a good partner. I feel like I want to make sure that I'm always listening to my wife, and especially for the things she's not saying that are coming through. And someone long enough and well enough, I feel like that it becomes sort of second nature that you really know your partner.
Yeah.
And I think I was a little like at some point, I was so at the beginning of law school, I was very wrapped up with like, I'm going to be there all the time. I'm going to be in the library because I didn't know what it was.
Right.
And actually the contracts professor that I ended up being a TA for, she told us something the first week of law school that eventually became sort of my mantra was, she says, like, you don't have to kill yourself to do well in law school. You just need to treat it like a job. Right. And I realized that most of the people in the room had never really had a job because they went straight from undergrad. Maybe they had like 6 months working in a law firm or something, but most of them had not really ever had a career.
Yeah.
But that advice to me was extremely helpful because I realized like, I don't have to be here 15 hours a day. Right. I've got to figure out how law school works.
Yeah.
And then I've got to treat it like a job, which meant you have to make sure your priorities are covered. You've got time for your family. And I I made a real priority within the first couple months of law school to do those things we talked about, like I made my family breakfast all the time. I cooked as much as I could.
Yeah.
I made sure that I was pulling my weight. I made sure that I was, taking the kids so that Joe would have time to herself or time to go do things with friends, so that she didn't feel like this experience was swallowing her up whole. And it was still difficult. It was still a stressful time for sure, especially financially, to go to single income and to move to a much more expensive area was very hard. So keeping priorities straight was really important, and taking my professor's advice to heart. Once I really let it sink in, that was such a game changer for me, because I ended up, when I started studying for the bar exam, it was kind of the same thing. I freaked out for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my God, I have to relearn law school all over again. And this is crazy. I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to be at the library 12 hours a day for the next 2 months. You aren't going to see me. I remember telling her that. And she just looked at me like, oh my God, here we go again. And what I realized after a couple of weeks of trying to be like that is that I was miserable and I wasn't learning very well. And so I was putting in 10-hour days at the library, but I took the weekends off, and I basically, more than most of my friends who were also studying for the bar, I carved out time for family, and it ended up being more important and I think helpful for me to have those rest periods. In my faith background, it's really important to take a day of rest, and that was huge to make sure that I was doing that and really taking the weekends as much as possible, and recognizing that it's like, if I can't learn this in 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, just studying, then I'm probably never going to pass and that's what I tell my friends and other people, younger lawyers that are coming along. It's like, treat it like a job, do the work. That's become a big mantra of mine, because I feel like somehow our parents and the examples we had growing up, I feel like there's been something lost in that. In the younger folks that I see now, there's maybe more of an expectation. I talk with young kids, and so many of them think they're going to become a famous influencer on social media or something. And what they don't realize is the people that make that work, they're doing the work.
Yeah.
It's a ton of time and effort and talent. So I really was big on making sure I kept my priorities, which for me meant, more than anything, making sure my family had the time they needed, that I wanted to be present, that I didn't want them to feel like they couldn't remember what I looked like. And I'll tell you, we had our law professors would often bring in special speakers to our classes, which were usually really fun. They'd bring in successful lawyers. We had one law professor who had gone to Yale Law School with Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
And she loved to name drop.
Yeah.
And we kind of almost didn't believe her. She would name drop so much. And then one day she was like teaching our ethics class, and she's, we have a special speaker today. It's the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, man, that woman was one of the most impressive human beings I've ever heard speak. She was, you could very quickly realize why she's in the position she's in.
Yeah.
And that was a phenomenal day. But I remember one of my classes, one of my professors brought in the lawyer who had first hired her for her first job. And he was one of the top lawyers in the Bay Area as far as successful, huge, big law firm.
Yeah.
And it was really neat because we got to do question and answer with that guy. And one of the 20-something-year-olds in the back of the class, who was kind of a goof, he raised his hand. He says, like, so what's your work-life family balance like? And this guy, who was, in the later days of his career, probably a millionaire many times over, he was very honest. And he said, well, I'll tell you, there's about 10 years. He's like, I have 4 kids, and there's about 10 years where I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened in any of their lives.
Wow. And
and he was on his 4th marriage. And, he went on to talk about, because he had talked about all of his wins and victories and his successes he won all these really big national recognized cases. So he had a really important career. But boy, when he talked about his family and the things he had sacrificed to have that career, it was like the air going out of a balloon. You heard that all the 20-somethings in the room were like, "Ooh, I don't want that."
Yeah.
And as somebody who already had a wife and kids, I was just like, "Oh, that is not going to be me."
Maybe I won't tell Joe about this lecture.
Well, I was just like, yeah, that's not. And I had some interviews with some big law firms when I was finishing up law school because I had done well, and the law school had recommended me for a few interviews. And I remember I had interview with a lady from like a firm with like 300 lawyers in San Francisco, and she was super nice. But as we were talking, we were sharing more tips on like diaper changing, because she was a young mom and everything. And I remember after it became clear halfway through the interview that I'm not a big law guy. I'm not going to be someone who's doing 90 hours a week, killing myself for a great paycheck, but never seeing my family. That's just not going to be me. And I remember we both kind of looked at each other halfway through the interview and I was like, look, I don't know if this role is really right for me, but there's a guy in my class who's like 24 years old. He's probably the smartest guy I know. And I know you're going to interview him next. And you guys would be crazy to not hire him. And here's all the reasons why. I felt like I was like giving a recommendation for one of my former students, because he wanted to be that guy.
Yeah.
And I think he got the job. I don't remember. But it was, it didn't line up with my priorities. And so I'm really blessed because the firm I'm at is extremely family friendly. And, we're very flexible with timing and everything else. And so one of the reasons I love this firm is because I am able to be fully present for my family and my kids. I've been able to, go on school trips with them and be a chaperone for extended trips with their music program and things, and still do, sort of like as long as we get the work done, it works, and that's a real blessing in this field. That can be difficult to find. So I feel like that's been good. So yeah, making sure my principles are in the right place and treating it like a job, right? That was key.
Yeah.
That was key. And I think because of the uncertainties you feel when you make a big change like that, it's easy to sort of freak out and let that consume you and sort of live in that space. And I went to school with some people who I feel like had trouble getting out of that headspace. I mentioned my class was not very competitive. There was one lady in my class who was, and I think she knew she was a mediocre student and she really wanted to do well. And so I remember one time, one of the things they have in law school is they have these online, but they also have books that are printed for all the different classes. And they have examples of the best essays from several years that you can use to practice to get ready for a teacher's exam. Because in law school, you don't have grades. You just have an exam, and that's your whole grade. You have one exam or one paper, right? So there's not a lot of homework.
Yeah.
And there's no extra credit. Like it's all down to one test. You take 1 3-hour exam for every class, and that's your whole grade. So if you're having a bad day, you better learn how to put that away, right? And I remember it was the first time we had finals, and everyone was freaking out because nobody knew what finals really felt like or looked like yet. And this lady had gone into the library early, and she had gotten all the books with the prior tests, and she'd made copies of all those prior exams so that she could study off of them, right? And then she took all those books, and we found out later she had hid them so that nobody else could access them.
Oh, no.
She took them and hid them like under the book stacks and behind different books. And, a few weeks, like none of us could find, like, where are all the prior exams? And she did that to try to give herself an advantage.
Wow.
And, karma's a you-know-what. That lady ended up never passing the bar as far as I know. But it was just like, I was like, oh, wow, but now being, having some experience and looking back on it, I realized she was living in a place of fear.
Yeah.
And that fear was consuming her rather than feeling confident in the ability she knew she had. Because she was not a dumb lady. She was a smart lady. She made good contributions in class. I mean, I didn't want to go like hang out with her, but she wasn't like the most pleasant person to be around, but she belonged there.
Yeah.
She knew what she was doing, but she allowed herself to be consumed by the fear of with the uncertainty.
Yeah.
And, rather than realize that we were a supportive group, and, my legal network is largely people that I went to law school with,
Yeah.
which is, I just had such a great class, and they're working in all kinds of fields. I really love those folks. They're really great, and most of them. And I think most of us chose not to. Law school is scary. Making changes is scary.
Yeah.
Doing hard things is scary, right? But it's a choice whether you live in that place of fear, or whether you sort of accept that you have abilities and you have talent, and that you're there for a reason, right? So I don't like going to immigration court, right? I hate it. I get a lot of performance anxiety and imposter syndrome before I go to immigration court, just because the stakes are so high, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing I tell myself before I go to court, any hearing, is I literally sit there and take deep breaths and tell myself, you know what? You're here for a reason. You can do hard things. And I tell my kids that now when they're facing things that are tough. I said, you know what? Do the work. Do the work. Treat it like a job. Do the work. You can do hard things.
Yeah.
You can do hard things. Doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect or always work out the way you want it to. But you can do hard things. You are capable. And I feel like, I don't know, that's just become sort of, when you become a dad and you get to be middle-aged, you have your cheesy advice that you give people all the time.
Right.
And that's why I tell that to my kids all the time. My son is he's a freshman in college, and he's taking more lab sciences in his first quarter of college than I took in 6 years of college. And and he's like, man, the workload's crazy. And I was like, yeah, but you know what? You're really smart and you're a hard worker. And you can do. It's like, if you are willing to do the work, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And he's doing great.
I think that's good advice. I think that's good advice for any of us at any age.
I hope so. It's like one of those things where you're like, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. Do the work. Do the work. Put your head down and do the work. If you don't know what to do, if you're freaked out, I don't know if you're like this, but I'm one of these people that sometimes I have so much stuff to do that it feels hard to know what should I do next. And I go back to the advice I've always given students and other people in my life. It's like, you just do the next thing, right? Just one foot in front of the other. Just do the work, put your head down, and you will find that this too shall pass. You'll get to the end of that.
Yeah.
And that's always been very comforting to me, that idea of this too shall pass. Is like, it feels crazy today, but tomorrow I'm going to wake up and it's going to be a new day. And I'm going to go outside and talk to my chickens and expect them to talk back to me. I'll probably scare the neighbors.
That's awesome. Jason, this has been so much fun. I love the wisdom that you shared about your journey. I think this is something that most of us, we might change jobs, we might even change careers, but this was something that was just massive. And I think it's been a great to kind of peel back the onion and look at what that process was like for you and your family. And I guess the final question that I'd ask is just, did taking this leap, this change, kind of have any effect on how you see goal setting or motivation or even success and happiness? Did that have any impact on that?
I mean, I feel like I go back and forth about what is truly success and everything else. And I feel like that changes all the time. Like I said, I was happy being a teacher, right? And I'm happy being a lawyer. And I think a lot of that is because I've always chosen to pursue things that I found interesting and intriguing and meaningful. And I feel like as long as you're being honest with yourself about what those things are to you, then you have a pretty good chance of being happy, right? It does feel very satisfying to be on this side of it. And because there is that not knowing. And there was a moment where it was like, am I really doing this? I don't have to do this. I can just go back and tell the school that I'm going to stay. They haven't hired anyone new yet. And so it's extremely satisfying to know that my wife and I made the effort, right? That we did make that leap, that we were that we had the courage to go, yeah, this sounds like it could be good. Let's give it a shot. So yeah, it feels really good on this side of it. And maybe it's made me, I want to believe that it's made me, well, first of all, I think it was good for my kids to see. I love the fact that I know my kids are really proud of that I took that leap.
Yeah.
I don't know if they fully appreciate or understand how much of that praise is due to my wife, because she doesn't ask for it. But the reality is, I think they are proud of us as parents, and I think they're proud of us for making big steps and trying, right? Swinging for the fences in some ways. And I feel great about that. And it makes me more willing to maybe step out and try new things, right? To travel to new places, to build a chicken coop when I don't know the first thing about building anything, just like, it's like sort of that attitude. It's like, well, I don't know how to do that, but I can figure it out.
Yeah.
I can do it. If I put my head down, do the work, I can figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that it is a confidence builder to take that leap, right? No matter what the outcome's like, what is it? What's the saying? Something about like you don't have an opportunity to appreciate the chances that you never took, right? Like whether you win or fail, win or lose, I think it's good to kind of bet on yourself sometime, and give yourself a chance to try something new, try something different, right? It is eye-opening. It does change your life in a lot of ways, and the way you approach things. And it makes you grow up in a lot of ways too. I felt like being a teacher in a lot of ways felt like I got to be a kid. I was just hanging out with great kids all the time and talking about poetry and stuff. And it kind of didn't feel like work most of the time, which is kind of magical. But at the same time, I feel like a more serious adult for having sort of taken this risk. And I feel like I've really done something important for my family and for myself, right? And that's really satisfying. And that definitely informs the way that I approach life. Ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, the way I end every show is with the questions, and these are inspired by James Lipton, who is host of Inside the Actors Studio. So we're just going to go through these questions. Question number 1, Jason, what motivates you?
Well, a lot of what we've been talking about. What motivates me, I think, is I first of all, I think I live for my family, my community, my faith community, the things that I care about deeply. I want to be in those things and around those things as much as I can. And I really want to contribute. I have kind of my mantra, we talk about doing the work. And for me, just on a personal level, when I think about legacy or anything like that, I just want to know that I was a blessing to other people. The way that I was brought up, I feel, I don't know if this was expressly said or anything else, but I feel like the purpose of life is to be, a blessing to others in whatever way you can. And so it really motivates me when I have an opportunity and I'm aware of that opportunity in the moment or ahead of time, that I know that I'm going to be doing something to make somebody else's life better. I mean, especially my wife and kids, but really anybody. It's extremely motivating to me to know that I'm going to be doing something good for somebody else.
Yeah. What discourages you?
Well, I would say for the last several years, maybe most of my adult life, I feel like just the general tone in the world is so much more negative. And I mean, we all know that it's easier to tear things down than to build things up, but it's discouraging to see all the different ways that and things that are contributing to that negativity and divisiveness. Um, it feels like we're more divisive and less inclusive, less community oriented as things go on. And maybe every adult feels like that as they get older. They get discouraged because, things are different than they thought they were when they were a kid or something. But I hate the tribalism. I hate how so many things have really sort of devolved into it's us versus them, and just so negative. And it's not just politics, but of course that's the loudest thing that we hear about. There's more that unites us than divides us. Yeah. So that division it's really tough to like watch the news, read the news, listen to the news. I spend a lot more time. I keep coming back to my chickens, but it's like my happy place. I spend time every day just hanging out in the yard, talking to my chickens, throwing, chicken scratch out for them to get, or just being in nature. I'm really fortunate. I live close to nature, but yeah, society in general, we've got to find a way to become less toxic, and I don't know. I'm hopeful we'll get there, but that's what gets me down for sure.
One word that describes you at your best.
I would say generous. When I'm at my best is when I feel like I'm being generous with my time, with my resources, with my attention. If I know that I'm being generous, I feel like I'm really sort of living out the things that I believe in my faith,
One word that describes you at your worst.
Oh, selfish. Is sort of the opposite, right? I mean, and it's the thing that I think most of us in one way or another fight against, is trying to put the needs of others before ourselves. And so that's, I think, the daily struggle. It's so easy to just sort of slip into sort of the trappings of being selfish, and then having that express itself in all kinds of ugly ways in the way you live your life. So I feel like when I become aware of how selfish I'm being about something, is when I feel the worst about myself.
Yeah. Other than family or work, what gives you purpose?
Faith, and probably just that feeling of, or that desire to do good things for other people. I'm a big gift giver. I love the holidays. I'm a big believer in like keeping your front yard looking as nice as you can, because it's not about people being like, oh, wow, you have such a nice yard. It's like wanting to know that I'm doing my part to be a good part of my neighborhood, my community, right? Because everyone likes to live around houses where people take care of their yard. And it's like you want to go over and talk to those people and hang out in their yard or whatever. So, I think that the thing that makes purpose is knowing that I'm giving back or giving of myself and putting other people ahead of myself. That really builds me up,
What guilty pleasure brings you joy?
So you mean, are we talking happiness or are we talking joy? Because I think those are different things.
It's up to you.
Well, so when I talk about guilty pleasures, probably I'm like most people these days, binge watching some great show, and probably like ice cream late at night. Yeah. Oh my God. That is my Achilles heel. My wife can put a tub of ice cream in the fridge and not touch it for a year. And then she'll come back and be like, where'd all my ice cream go? I was like, you mean the one you bought in February? Like, I ate that a long time ago. So yeah, that's probably the guilty pleasures, for the most part. Yeah.
How do you celebrate a win?
Man, sometimes junk food, but oftentimes, comfort food, whatever. A lot of times, if I'm really excited about the way a day went or something, I will find a way to put myself in nature. I live on the Monterey Bay in California, which is, if you've never been to California, I live in the part of California that you are thinking about in your mind when you're envisioning California. Santa Cruz, Monterey, and all points in between. It's just a beautiful place to be. Redwood trees and pretty beaches and lots of amazing animals and wildlife. And so, I might go kayaking there's a place nearby where you can see lots of wildlife like sea otters and things. My wife likes to get up early and go tide pooling. There's all kinds of amazing creatures. We like to go on hikes in the redwood forest. But even if it's just in my backyard, if I feel like I earned an afternoon with the chickens or something, that's my favorite. I have an ocean view, not to brag or anything. We live in an amazing place. We're very fortunate, but we have an ocean view from the front of our house, and I will get my Nespresso in the morning and go sit out on my little bench looking at our view and just enjoy the bird song and my coffee, and that feels like the greatest reward.
That's awesome. How do you bounce back after a loss?
It's kind of the same. You go to your happy place. Honestly, one of the things that I love about my wife is she understands the importance of solitude and quiet. And I was raised with a TV always on and a family full of very loud people. And I myself am very loud, and I love to hear loudness around me. And so I have learned in the course of our marriage, we've been married 21 years, I've learned to appreciate quiet and solitude and silence. And I find it to be very healing to just be outside, to be in nature, to find a place that's quiet where I can really sort of spend time in prayer, that I can spend time just sort of breathing and kind of going through the things that I need to tell myself to sort of pick myself up again and kind of getting myself centered. So that's how you bounce back. That's how I bounce back. And probably the biggest thing, reminding myself this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And today is what it is, but tomorrow you're going to wake up and it's going to be a new day, a different day. And, I was one of those kids I was a drama kid when I was younger, and everything felt like the end of the world. Going through puberty was rough. And, but at the same time, I was very happy-go-lucky. And so my teacher used to tell me I was bipolar and stuff. But yeah, this too shall pass. That was such a huge life lesson for me when that hit home. I think it was working at KJCR, our old radio station. Yeah. There was a song that there was a Christian comedian who had an album, and we used to play it.
Yep.
And it was called "This Too Shall Pass." And I think about that phrase. That song plays in my head like an earworm.
Yeah.
Which is, I didn't even like the song, but like the sentiment is so true, I think. And it's such a powerful thing to think about, is that no matter what your circumstance you're in, it doesn't have to be forever.
Yeah.
And you will have opportunities to right the ship, to have new experiences. You'll have more opportunities where you'll have wins in the future, Yeah. And so to me, that's just reminding myself that, and getting somewhere quiet enough where I can hear myself telling myself that.
Yeah.
So.
Who was the last person you expressed gratitude towards?
My partners. We had lunch last week. Hopefully I'm expressing gratitude to folks every day, but my partners are so capable and so smart. And one of them's younger than me, but he's been a lawyer longer than I have. They're good people. They're very honest. They're very ethical, and they're extremely supportive. And in a lot of ways, they make it possible. They've made it possible for me to have the career that I have. And they're so extremely knowledgeable and helpful and generous with their time. And so I try to tell them all the time how much I appreciate them, because even though I'm not young, I'm the new guy on the street compared to when we talk about how much experience we have. So I'm always learning.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, my partners, just last week, we had lunch and I was telling them how much I appreciate them and you know, what they've done for me and our company, our firm, and what it means to me and everything. So I think that was the most recent.
If you could go back in time, what would you tell your 25-year-old self?
Ooh, less ice cream. No, I probably would say, hey, you should probably spend more time focused on being a healthy person. But, you know, honestly, I'd probably just say, like, I don't have any regrets, or at least none that stick out. I loved my 10 years being in education, and I really appreciated the gift of being able to go back to school in that time period. And, you know, this job that I do now, it's such a different challenge every day, and it's not always easy. It's not always fun. But I really appreciate, you know, the opportunities that this career has given me, and the chance, especially to when you help people and you're able to help families be together and everything. It's really rewarding. It's very it's kind of a constant reminder that you're doing something good. So I think I would probably tell myself, like, just try to enjoy it, try to appreciate it, right? The next 20 or 30 years is going to be incredible, and just appreciate every part of it for what it is.
Yeah. That's awesome. Jason, thank you so much for doing this, for telling your story, for sharing with people. I think it's been fun. It's been inspiring, and I just appreciate you being willing to be here tonight.
Well, I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And that is the show today. Thank you so much for being here. You can check out the show notes, learn how to connect with Jason at holisticproductivity.com. You'll find all that information there. You know, again, we appreciate you spending this time with us. Make sure that you are subscribed on your favorite podcast platform so that you can be alerted when all of the new episodes come out. Also on YouTube, you can watch the show there if you did not know that. But you don't want to miss the next show. If you like this episode, just go ahead and rate it 5 stars. It's not for me. It's for others that are looking for this type of content. That helps them find this and hopefully, you know, get closer to achieving their goals and be inspired by Jason and other people like him. Be sure to follow at Wholistic Productivity on all of the social media platforms: Instagram, Threads, Facebook, YouTube, Substack, LinkedIn. We're all there, so go find us there and connect. I offer a lot of great productivity tips and motivation throughout the week, and so you want to be dialed in with that. And then I've talked about this recently, our Holistic Productivity Group on School. That's SKOOL. This community is so fantastic. It is growing every day, and we are just focused on sharing with each other, kind of like Jason did today, just sharing with each other what we've learned, how we can be more productive, the gratitude that we have in life, the wins. We're celebrating those together. I love what's happening in that community. It's free, so go check that out. A lot of great resources in there as well. So find the link for that in the show notes. But as always, thank you for listening. I'm so glad that you're here. And again, my goal, the reason that I do this show, is to help you dream big, plan smart, and live fully. So thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Take care.